Hey, everybody. We have our special guest, Katie Bogenschutz, Tallahassee criminal defense attorney. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks for having me. I heard
Yeah.
the sentencing hearing on a kayak and I almost dumped it in the middle of it as I was telling Judy before it started. Because I was trying to get to the side so I could watch in real time. I
Well,
was just
wait a
screening
second.
it.
What are the logistics of listening when you're kayaking? So,
Oh, I,
how
I
did
have
you
like
do it?
a waterproof bag, put my
Mhm.
phone in that, and then I'm like streaming it to earbuds. And as soon as Harvey started talking, I was like, oh my God, I have to see this.
Wow. So, was it peaceful paddling, kayaking while
It
listening?
was up until that point, and then I was all upset I wasn't in front of my computer, so I couldn't look up the sites, and, uh,
Oh.
but it's beautiful here. There's a plug for Florida Springs if anybody comes down for, I don't know, any other trials that might be in the future.
Mhm.
Highly recommend going to see one of the Florida Springs on an off day.
So, where exactly is that?
I'm off the Itchitucknee River, so it's very close to Gainesville. Um, but
Mhm.
Florida has tons of springs. We have an aquifer. It's just beautiful. Yeah. Well, if you do it correctly, your earbuds don't need to be water resistant because your head doesn't submerge.
Well, I'm so glad you didn't fall out of your
Yeah,
kayak.
I was just, as soon as I started going, the current started taking me, and I was like, oh no, this is not going to be a good ending.
Oh gosh. Well, what about crocodiles, alligators? Are you
I did not
concerned with
see
that?
any today. We had river
Mhm.
otters. I saw some otters. We've seen some deer, but it's very shallow right now, so we haven't even seen any manatees.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Okay.
but it's just very pleasant to be out in the woods. Yeah, and then this sentencing hearing, I was like, oh my gosh, that this must have been wild in the courtroom.
Yeah, it looked like a totally packed house. That's a surprise, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah, what I was noting was potentially some young people in there that looked like they were about the right age to be interns too,
Hmm.
that may have decided to show up.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what people kept asking. Who are those two sort of teenage-ish
Yeah,
looking boys? But they definitely were not Dan Markel's children.
right. They may have been Josh's kids. I haven't met his kids. But I
Hmm.
mean, like I used to go to court when my parents had something going on that was wild, sometimes
Hmm.
just for entertainment.
That's true. Maybe they had a break from school today. So
Yeah, that's true. It's depending on where they're in school, it's what, Indigenous Peoples Day or Columbus Day, depending on.
yeah. So yes, Donna was actually sentenced to life plus 30 years consecutively for both of counts 2 and 3. So my voice is dying as usual. So Katie, can you just tell us what were some of the highlights of
Yeah.
today's hearing?
So she was sentenced, but not before a thorough airing of the grievances, as
Mm-hmm.
it were.
Yeah.
And anybody who thought Harvey was a frail old man because of ways that Donna treated him in public, had those. I mean, he was pretty forceful with his statement. I recommend, if you haven't seen it, go back and watch. It's a pretty good example of how you should not have your client and people supporting them testify at sentencing. I mean, I usually have a very long talk with them where I'm like, look, I understand you're ticked. We thought this was going to be a different income or a different outcome here. But what you need to do is you do not need to give everyone in the room the middle finger while advocating for yourself. Like they're the two things you don't, one is not necessary for the other. That you can say, I disagree with the jury's verdict. I respect the service to the community. I do think they got it wrong. However, I'm going to respect this court's rulings and the jury's verdict. And here are the reasons I think I should get a minimal sentence. So consecutively means, count one was murder one. The only possible sentence on that one is life. It is a capital felony, and life is life. You come out in a box in Florida, not breathing. So, whatever the term your natural life is, that is the term you will serve. Counts 2 and 3 were solicitation and conspiracy. Both of those are punishable by up to 30 years in prison, 30 years in prison. That means that each of those counts, first of all, the judge had the ability to sentence her to 30 years or less on each count. So you heard them make the motion for a downward departure, which I thought was not going anywhere, but, it was kind of like, they at least went through the motions. Counts 2 and 3, I believe, will run consecutive to count 1, but concurrent to each other, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Judy? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, yeah, this is a new microphone that I just bought from Best Buy yesterday. So you can mute it by tapping it and then tap it again to unmute.
Wow.
Yeah. So I do recall him saying consecutive for something, but
right. Consecutive means one right after the other.
Yes.
So count 1 would run, and basically whenever she finishes her life term, the 30 years for count 2 would start, and then the 30 years for count 3 would start after the 30 years for count 2. I believe that what he said, and of course I, was not taking notes at the time, but I believe that he said that 2 and 3 would be concurrent to each other, but consecutive to count 1. Concurrent to each other means that they're running at the same time. So every day that you have 2 30-year sentences running at the same time. So each day counts for a day on each one of those sentences. But like I said, it's kind of academic at this point because count 1 was a life sentence. Part of the reason that they put so much into the sentencing for 2 and 3 is that they think that they have an argument on appeal because there was no overt act that Donna did in furtherance of the homicide, which would put her into the same category as a case called Denise Williams, which I think came down in about, I know it was tried right after I was at the state attorney's office here. It was tried like in the late fall of 2018, late fall, early winter of 2018, right before Christmas. And then I think it took about a year and a half to be appealed, but they found that Denise Williams did not do any overt act in furtherance of the murder. They found that she solicited somebody to do it, that she conspired with that person, but there was no money that really changed hands either. She had her secret boyfriend, actually her husband's best friend that she was sleeping with. This is the state's theory of the case, obviously, murder her current husband, and then she collected on the life insurance. But there was never anything and this case was tried about 20 years after it happened. I think he went missing in maybe 18 years after it happened. I think he went missing in like 1999 or 2000. And then they tried the case in 2018. So if it had been tried at the time, I think they probably would have had a little bit more information as to things she did in furtherance of the homicide. But they're making, you heard during the trial that they mentioned Denise Williams, the Williams case over and over and over again. And it's because her murder 1 conviction was reversed. And then she was resentenced on, I think it was just solicitation and conspiracy. I'm not 100% on that. I'd have to look it up. It's been a while. But because, and a term of years is always preferable to a life sentence if you're a criminal defense attorney. So, a finite term of years versus a life sentence, which is an indeterminate sentence, doesn't matter. You're going to stay in there until you die. So, and especially when you do 85% in Florida generally for felony crimes. There's exceptions like sex crimes. You don't get any gain time or good time. Gun crimes, there's some movement to run those all consecutive. There's special sentencing considerations as to how much of that you'll actually serve. But that is part of the consideration there. That, I mean, I don't know if Donna has 30 years left in her, but we're
Yeah.
also moving toward potentially reducing the percentage of time that somebody does in custody for each one of these offenses. So there was a bill in front of Congress, or our state, our state legislature, to reduce the 85% to 72% on
Hmm.
crimes where you're eligible for gain time and good time. So,
Okay.
you're
But
always planning for those contingencies.
hmm but in Florida, life means life. There's no
Correct.
chance of, oh, good behavior, so you can come out early.
Correct.
Oh,
So, we did used to have parole. Um, and if you hear of someone being paroled or violating their parole, it's usually because they were sentenced before about the year 2000.
oh.
So, generally, it's something along the lines of murder, or, a pretty serious sex crime, um, to have parole be a thing. So,
Hmm.
so there is still a parole commission because of that.
Hmm.
That if you were sentenced under that sentencing structure, you're entitled to have that work in your favor.
Hmm. Yeah, I was surprised at how much the judge let everyone just go on and on. It was just so lengthy, as if they were trying to re argue the whole case. So, is that typical where the judge just lets people ramble?
Usually not. Um, I would imagine that the only reason he was letting them do it is because, in this case, like, you do have an argument as to sentencing for counts 2 and 3. And like I said, at this point in time, it's an academic issue that may turn into an actual issue down the road. But I, I think that a lot of times the judges give the defense a lot of leeway, and it's usually enough rope to hang themselves with. Um, in this case, like, I don't think that helped at all.
Hmm.
Any of that stuff. I mean, I it kind of made it. I mean, kind of made it worse. I mean, when I was listening to Harvey talk, I was like, oh, maybe he wasn't on it. Maybe he isn't senile.
Yeah, he seemed pretty sharp,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah,
totally 100% Team Donna.
yeah, and he was very forceful about it too.
Hmm.
It was a cogent, clear argument, and an airing of the grievances, as I mentioned. But it made perfect sense. This is not some doddering old fool who, his wife and son planned this homicide around him. At
Yeah.
least to me. Like, what are the chances that that guy, it was done behind his back?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, people are saying this new microphone doesn't seem to be working well. So let me know. I mean, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
So, okay. Well, thanks for doing most of the talking as usual anyway. So, what about Dr. Graper? I thought he was terrible. That's how I felt about him from the start when he first made his appearance in this case, talking to the newspaper down in Miami, calling them a five-star family. So,
Mhm.
I mean, he just seemed to love the limelight.
Yeah, he reminds me of other people that I know that seem to feed off of attention, and,
Hmm.
one of these people that, like, it's a I had a cat like this back in the day too. There's no such thing as bad attention.
Oh,
Even if you're getting yelled at, they're paying attention to you.
yeah,
So, that's, Dr. Graber and my cat have quite a bit in common. Um,
that's
but
funny.
yeah, it's, like he mentioned, he was the former mayor of Broward County, so he must have been the mayor when I was living down there, and I may have met him at some point in time, but he seemed very self-important and
Hmm.
talked more about himself than he did about the Adelsons, or at least as much about himself as he did about Donna Adelson. And the purpose of speaking on behalf of a defendant at a sentencing hearing is not to say, basically F the police. You guys got it all wrong. Double middle fingers. Go Donna. It's to say, look, you've seen the evidence in this case. I understand what the jury verdict was, but here is another side to this person. I can speak as somebody who personally knows this. Oh, that's hilarious.
Farm Cat always has the most hilarious comments. I didn't get it.
Thank you,
first.
Farm Cat.
Thank you for the humor.
I needed that. Yeah. Yeah, but it's like, it's supposed to be something where, you don't really attack the court, the judge, the prosecution, all the cops, all the witnesses, all the evidence, and say this is an innocent woman and you railroaded her. It's where you say, look, Donna Adelson is a kind person. I understand what happened in the courtroom. Some of the other letters actually hit the right tone. Her childhood friend that said that she, they met when Donna asked her to sit at the table with her in 7th grade. That was the exact right tone. That, like, I've maintained a relationship with her over 62 years. Here's all the kind things that she did for me over the course of my life in, welcoming in someone who was obviously a foreigner, didn't speak the language. She helped me get jobs. We stayed in touch over the years. She's, attended my children's, it kind of gives you a fuller package of who the person is rather than just what the state put on to prove up their case in the courtroom. So hers actually hit the right tone. I can't speak to the facts of the case. I can tell you about the Donna that I know. A lot of times, I recall a sentencing I did a couple years ago where the defendant's child had a medical condition. And so one of our reasons to ask the judge for a minimal sentence and maybe more probation on the outside was to say that, okay, it's a very young child, trying to get her to cooperate to do this medical stuff is difficult. And so we're asking you, judge, to take this into consideration when you're deciding how to divide up the sentence with incarceration and probation, because, like, this is not somebody who's going to be going out to the club when he's on probation. He's going to be taking care of his sick kid. So and I've also, especially cases where defendants have had autistic children, where, knowing the person who is caring for you is particularly important, maybe to a nonverbal autistic child or to an adult with dementia. So being able to use that. So, like, kind of getting a fuller picture of their lives and not just, 11 years ago, here's what happened.
Yeah.
And going after the Markels too, I think was.
Yeah. That was horrible because from what we've heard, which I believe, what Harvey said is totally not true. He's just giving a little piece of the pie to make Wendy look good. But the truth is that it was only the first couple of years after Dan was killed that Wendy allowed the Markels to still see the kids. But then there was a period of time for about 6 years after Sigfredo was arrested that visitation, communication was completely cut off. And that was very, very cruel. And Harvey just totally, dismisses that part.
Yeah, and it occurs to me that there are plenty of grandparents that are not involved in their grandchildren's lives because they're not into it. Maybe they didn't want to be parents in the first place. Maybe whatever, they're off living their best life. But these grandparents very much were trying to, even with the distance, there are these repeated entreaties to Wendy to, okay, how about this date? Okay, how about this date? Or, can we do, and they're moving their calendars around trying to accommodate. It's not like it's not like I just, to cut off a whole side of the family like that is really problematic, I think. Yeah. And you'll note that that's one of so Judge Hankinson was the first judge or the judge that tried the first case, and his background is federal. He was federal court the whole way through, and then went to the state bench. And he used to let jurors ask questions. And that's permissive in Florida. It's not mandatory. So that's the only trial you could see any of the jurors be able to ask questions of the witnesses after they were on the stand. And I think it is instructive if you were to listen to the end of Wendy's testimony in that case. The first question from the jurors is, why haven't you let the Markels see the grandchildren? And then also to question her about the names again, because I think most normal people think that there's just unending cruelty there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I do want to ask you this. Someone asked this in the chat on Deep Dive True Crime. Could Harvey be held in contempt of court? I didn't think so, but what's your opinion?
That's why I was like rushing to the side of the of the river going, I want to see this if he goes in for this. Because I wasn't sure how far it was going to go. In theory he could, but I think Judge Everett, he's got a great temperament as a judge. Like, when you're starting to kind of push his buttons, and he will give you multiple warning signs. And he was basically asking the lawyers to step in and put the kibosh on this with Harvey. And he did it again with Donna, if you recall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, could he be held in contempt? Possibly. I mean, I think that Harvey probably came closer to that than Donna did, because he was saying a lie. The judge was biased. The jury was, I mean, like he really went for the throat. And one thing that really struck me was, didn't these attorneys review their statements before they read them? Because it's not a question and answer. Like, for example, when I had the child that had the medical condition, I put the defendant's wife on the stand and had her testify and answer questions with me about the medical condition. So that, sometimes that can kind of go off the rails with a witness at trial, like consider Shadrach. But when you're reading a statement off a piece of paper, like, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be showing that to the lawyer beforehand, and that maybe the lawyer should be going to like entire paragraphs of that. So I wonder if they read it, or what the dynamics behind the scenes are. I mean, it's possible they're very angry at their lawyers and decided not to show them their statements.
Okay. What are your thoughts about remorse and sentencing, Davis versus State? Yeah,
that was one of the ones that I was like, it hasn't come up for me, and I haven't been able to research it, so I can't really speak to it. But it really bugs me that, I mean, Donna at least tried to walk the line with, I am so sorry this happened to Dan, and I'm so sorry this happened to my grandchildren. However, it was not me. Harvey, right past it, not a word of kindness for the Markels, and in fact, really went after them, I thought.
Yeah, that was unnecessarily cruel to them, I thought.
And I think it's just obvious for anybody that looks at the evidence. I mean, Donna did quite a bit to herself, even since her arrest. It's the verdict on Charlie's case, to create more evidence that she, in fact, did this. And now, whether it's that she had bad counsel at the time, or, maybe nobody thought they needed to advise her not to bribe the other inmates, because who would be crazy enough to do that?
Yeah. Jeez, that was ridiculous.
Right. I mean, like, I shouldn't have to tell you that driving 120 miles an hour down a dark road while 5 times the legal limit is not a good idea. I mean, that should be that should be pretty, something we can all agree on.
Yeah. Don't try to bribe people, drug addicts.
Right. And drug addicts that are in custody and haven't been sentenced yet and are looking for some kind of benefit. So they must have been like, wow, this is awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Donna. Yeah. Especially Trina.
Right.
Trina was facing many years in prison.
Yeah. And I mean, you can discount them all day long, but the thing is that, they're all separate from each other. All these inmates are separate from each other, and they're all separately coming forward with it. And that's why, I'm looking at the comment below. Judge Everett took out most of his frustration on the ringing cell phone. Yeah. As opposed to the attorneys. He's very careful. He doesn't want to end up getting reversed or end up getting a situation where they appeal it again, saying he should have recused himself and uh, muddy him up.
Mm-hmm.
Perjury is not pursued more often because it is very difficult to prove that someone made a statement knowing it was false
Mm-hmm.
at the time they said it under oath. And Florida actually says that you need to have two under oath statements that conflict. So both statements need to be under oath and conflict with each other. So like maybe I'm having a bad day and I misspoke as to the date. Maybe I don't remember because it's 11 years later. Maybe, maybe just gonna.
I didn't understand the question.
Right. I don't understand the question. Maybe I don't know, drank a bottle and a half of wine last night while I was drinking Pepto-Bismol.
I was nervous. Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe I got bad advice from an attorney, or I misunderstood at what point in time they were asking me the question about. There's a lot of ways you can, in the words of one of my old law school professors, he used to say, you can weasel your way out of this. Weasel. When we were on trial teams, he was like, go ahead, weasel.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Okay. So do you think the fact that Georgia requested that Donna not be housed with Katie is a clear sign that she's coming for Wendy?
You could read it that way. You often, however, because the female side of the Department of Corrections is so small. But if you look at the number of women that are incarcerated versus the number of men, and particularly women with life sentences, that have committed a homicide or, God forbid, a capital sexual battery, because that's happened before, that there's a finite number of places where you could house them. I used to do the keep separate orders because Katie did testify against her, and that's the only one that she could potentially be housed with, being that the rest. Well, I guess. Hang on, I'm talking myself out of it now, because there wasn't a keep separate order for Drina Bernhardt or for
Patricia
Bird. Williams.
Bird.
Sorry. But there wasn't a keep separate order for them. So I don't know, but they're also not potentially going to get life sentences, at least from what I've seen. And they were cooperating with the state. So, yes, that's a possibility, but there's also the fact that you don't want somebody that testified against somebody else in the same pod, because you just don't want that. And the Department of Corrections does their own research on this stuff as well to make sure that somebody that testified against somebody else, or somebody that even provided information on a case and maybe didn't testify because the state didn't need them. We have plenty of drug cases where we have a confidential informant that does a buy from a dealer at a house and does a couple of different buys that are audio and video recorded. Then we don't charge the buys as crimes because we don't want to burn that confidential informant. You just use those buys to get a search warrant for the house, and you charge the trafficking amount that you find in the house, without burning the confidential informant who can do other buys for you in the future. But usually, once there's enough described about the buys, the defendant can kind of figure out who that guy is. When I say burn the confidential informant, I mean have them up on the stand testifying in court and listed as a witness with their name, because then you probably can't use them again. If your guy figures out who it is, it makes it more difficult for the police to use them again, but it doesn't mean that, they can never, ever do another buy. So those are the kinds of things that the Department of Corrections researches when they put people together, that this wasn't the confidential informant that did the buy, that caused the search warrant that got us, 200 pounds of marijuana from the basement of this guy's house.
Mm.
And, he knows about it. So we don't want them in the same pod.
Mm-hmm. So what are the possible prisons that Donna could be placed in?
So the one that they were talking about was Lowell. And that is where death row is for women.
But Katie's there.
Right. Now, there's also, so what she will do is she'll go to what's called the Northwest Florida Reception Center first, and she'll probably spend somewhere between a week and a month there getting evaluated, and then they will decide where to place her. And that's where they do all their little research to see, is there like anybody she needs to be kept separate from that testified in her case, or does she have any family members that are in the prison system? Are there any physical issues? Does she need to be in a medical pod? And they'll probably actually do that for her just because of the complaining and, her age, that she may be placed in more of a medical unit. Whereas Katie's younger than I am, I think.
Yeah, she's like 40-ish, maybe.
Yeah. I thought she was even younger than that, but yeah, she's not, of an age that would cause her to have medical issues. So I think Donna might be going to one of their more medical units. They did ask for her to be placed near Dade County. I can tell you that most of the prisons in Florida are in the like northern middle part of the state, because that's where the land is cheaper. So it's, cheaper to buy, cheaper to pay people, cheaper to house. There is, I'm trying to see who has a women's, because I mostly have male clients, as you can imagine.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm looking to see if there's any female institutions in South Florida. I feel like Okeechobee might be one. And Okeechobee is in western Palm Beach County, which would be 2 counties north. So that's relatively close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds really close to.
Yeah, I mean, the population down there is large, so the traffic is bad. But I mean, it's not Okeechobee.
There's like some sort of Everglades Correctional.
Yeah. Everglades Correctional, I think, is men only, but don't.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's kind of men. Yeah, it's sad to see there are so many prisons in Florida.
Yeah. As a country, we we incarcerate at a lot higher rate than other developed nations. That's something that has been studied for quite a bit of time. But I don't think anybody's ever going to make the argument that, homicide shouldn't be punished.
Yeah, she belongs in prison. So, yeah. Well, just wanted to again thank you for your time, because you're sort of on a mini vacation right now from your very busy law practice. So thanks for sharing.
Still doing work here. Knowledge. My laptop's here.
Yeah, same here. Every time I go on vacation, I have my computer, constantly checking messages. Yeah. Teresa has a good question. Mm-hmm. Why do you think Donna wanted to speak without being under oath? Well, she didn't have to be under oath, right? Because the trial's over. Yeah.
Right. Trial's over. Case law says she doesn't have to be. So why would she want to? Why would you want to be under oath if you can not be under oath? That would be my answer. Also, if there's any kind of a reversal on count 1, which is what most of the sentencing hearing was about, the solicitation and the conspiracy potentially being the only counts that are left, I guess there may be an argument that maybe you shouldn't be able to use her prior statement that was made in conjunction with the sentencing hearing. Because, I mean, she said some stuff that I certainly would have tried to stop her if she were my client, that we would have had a very long talk about those letters, that I would have been taking portions of them out, and particularly the part about the biased judge and stuff like that. So, I mean, it makes me wonder if the attorneys didn't see them beforehand. And, you know, it's not smart to let your clients testify without, or to read something that you don't know what they're going to read.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about this? I mean, they're not allowed to come out for funerals if you're actually in prison, right? Because Katie was just in jail pending trial when her mom died.
There is some precedent for release, like just to go to the I don't know, the ceremony's the right thing for the funeral. But you have to pay for
Security.
yes, your own security. It happens very, very rarely for that reason. I can recall researching it in the past because I had somebody who wanted to go out. I think all the research I did on it was when I was a prosecutor, because somebody wanted to go to a family member's funeral pending sentencing, I think.
Oh, but I mean, you would think that once someone has been convicted and sentenced, then that's it. You don't get released for anything. I've
Right.
never heard of that.
Yeah, there's some very I've seen people like want to be released pending trial, after trial. You know, my daughter died, my mom died. I had one where I think this is back in Broward County, where somebody who was in custody had their child was murdered
Oh,
or something like that, and I was just like, ugh. I really wasn't quite sure how to handle it. I don't remember what they were in on, but I remember that happened, and I was just like, I don't know what to do with this. I think that we eventually came to an agreement on a bond, but I mean, it certainly wasn't a homicide case.
oh, okay. Are the prisons air conditioned?
Yes, they are. I know they keep saying that they're not air conditioned. Or at least, you know, the visiting areas are. It gets very hot in Florida, and it's been getting hotter lately, whatever you believe in as to climate change. So no, they're air conditioned. You know, they're not sweating to death. There may be certain portions of it. I mean, the yard isn't air conditioned, obviously.
Okay. Could they still even do a plea deal at this point?
Well, the same way that they would do it with Katie, that you would have to, the state would have to be the initiator, though, of saying, I would like to let her plead to murder too, and give her 20 years or whatever makes them or whatever sentencing might possibly help. I can't imagine that they knocked too much off of her sentence, because I mean, she was every time they offered her the world, and she always thought she could beat it.
Yeah. And thanks to James at Deep Dive True Crime, he confirmed that the state did not give Donna any sort of offer to make a deal, turn over Wendy in exchange for, you know, getting off scot-free. So
Yeah,
that was a rumor.
Well, there was a single source rumor, I think. But yeah, it's, you know, you don't report rumors, you report facts.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to improve, but I just bought this, and apparently lots of people are saying this microphone stinks. So I'm going to plug in my old one, which sometimes gave out, and we'll see if there's any sort of improvement. But I think we're sort of winding down anyway because Katie's on vacation here. So, yeah. Um, so, Katie, have you been involved with, well, I shouldn't say involved with, have you been obsessed with any other cases that are not work related?
Yeah, I've always been very interested, and of course, now that the perpetrator has died, it's gonna remain a mystery forever. The Amityville homicides, not the haunting or anything like that, but the homicides. There were 6 people that were murdered in their own home, and they were all in bed, but they were shot separately, and they were all face down in their beds, and the forensics said that they weren't moved. So, what happened? So I always thought that that was kind of a fascinating case. And then, of course, the guy that ended up doing all the life sentences for it was recently died in prison. So we'll never get the answers on that. But I always thought that there were more people involved in it, and that maybe his friends needed to be looked at. And I actually tried reading some of the trial transcripts on that one. And that one happened back in the 70s before I was even born. I'm an early 80s baby.
Huh. Okay. Well, here somebody is disputing what you just said. Dee says those prisons are not air conditioned except the office, admin, and medical areas.
Let's see.
But haven't you actually been there?
Yeah, I've never been in an area of a prison that was not air conditioned. Of course, I'm not meeting with people in their cells. So, but you also have to keep in mind that there's people that work there, like prison guards that are in there at all times. And having over 100-degree heat at all times in a building with the air not moving.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense. They have to keep it air conditioned, right? Because it gets so hot in Florida.
Yeah, no, apparently about half of them are, I just did a quick Google, about half of them are air conditioned, and they're trying to get more of them air conditioned. But the main areas and the areas with the employees are. Let's see. Looks like there was a state budget process in place to get conditioning. But I mean, the hotter it gets, the more it becomes necessary. And then you'll end up with like elderly. I mean, like when we had power outages in South, like Fort Lauderdale area after Hurricane Irma, we had a bunch of people die in nursing homes. That's at some point that becomes cruel and unusual. Like if you have people that are dying in nursing homes, then that's not something that the state can subject an inmate to. I understand it's like after a hurricane, it's an emergency situation, but if people are dying from the heat, then no, you're not allowed to do that. It's unconstitutional.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the money issue. So apparently Donna has to pay these costs for the first trial getting postponed because Rashbaum withdrew plus more. So what happens if she doesn't pay it? Nothing?
I mean, it'll be reduced to a civil lien against her. And if she's ever released, that, her driver's license could be suspended. I mean, it's really not, there's no teeth in it whatsoever. They could also potentially try to take it out of commissary or something like that, though.
Now, that would be bad if she couldn't get commissary.
Right.
Yeah.
I was looking for the PSI, and I thought maybe it would be filed, but I didn't see it. I only saw that they filed the letters because I was like hearing about when Jackie was, just the more salacious stuff, like trying to say that they remortgaged their house for legal fees and stuff. It sounds like they might be running a little low on funds.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, somebody's asking about Social Security. So they're supposed to not get Social Security benefits after getting convicted.
Right.
Yeah. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, prior to conviction, like innocent until proven guilty, you'd still be receiving them.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think. Well, what did you think about people like her friend Rick Shakran, who was saying that there should have been a motion for a change of venue? This wouldn't have happened if she weren't in Tallahassee with these biased jurors.
And I've repeatedly said, that defense may have worked in Miami or Fort Lauderdale. It's the same thing. Big city, people are more inclined to wrap their head around a little bit more of a larger stretch, I guess, on the part of the defense. And a lot of times in larger cities, there's bad feelings towards the police and prosecutors and your local officials, that people are just a lot more skeptical.
Yeah. Well, but the motion for change of venue, that's just something she can bring up in her appeal, right? Because Charlie brought that up in his appeal.
Yeah, and I'm also, one of the cases that one of the more recent cases where that was actually a thing was Casey Anthony. And her case was in Orlando, which of course is a large metro area. But if you recall, the child was missing. Like she'd apparently been killed very quickly after she went missing. But the child was missing for like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 months, and her picture was everywhere. And so like there was just like this media barrage trying to get her face out there so that somebody would see this child potentially walking down the street with their kidnapper and, call it in, or just, it was basically papering the public with this kid's face.
Yeah.
So I think that that's a much different situation than you have in Tallahassee. This happened 11 years ago. The population moves. It's not one of these things where, hey, there's this very, very cute little girl that's missing who's got this little angelic face, and we've got her picture up on every single billboard we can find, on every single news station, just trying to, I mean, it was like wall to wall, even in Fort Lauderdale, which is about 3 hours south of there. I mean, it was like wall to wall coverage of this little girl missing. And it seemed, that's one of the cases where they did change the venue, but it was just inundated, that information. So, and I just don't think that you have the same facts here.
Yeah, totally. Because from what I recall, those 2 young jurors who spoke out.
Right.
First, JC said she had just moved to Tallahassee 5 years ago. And that young man, he said he was 11 when this happened. He just vaguely recalled a teacher maybe mentioning it, but that was it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like he was 14 when it happened. I mean, maybe I paid attention to crimes when I was 14, but my parents were both lawyers. Like, it's not, it's not something that normal 14-year-olds pay attention to.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of movement in and out of Tallahassee with the legislature and the colleges, and, life happens.
Yeah. So I'm sure she'll get some attorneys that specialize in appeals. So aren't there any other specialists besides Upperman? And let's see. I mean, what's the pool of potential appellate lawyers like?
Well, I can say that they could go to somebody in South Florida for an appeal, or for an appellate lawyer, because there's really not much you need to be present for an appeal. There's potentially, I mean, mostly it's filing briefs. You may have an oral argument on the issues, but that's one day that you have an oral argument on a case. So, I mean, it's really nothing to say, oh, they could, you know, fly up and get a hotel room next to the First District Court of Appeals and, you know, argue the case and fly back the next day. So, I mean, I would expect they'd probably go to somebody in Miami. There's a guy named Rich Rosenbaum that I used to go to for a lot of stuff in South Florida. I don't know if the other thing is that because there's so many lawyers involved in this case, that there's a lot of people who are just like, I just don't want to be involved in this. And it would not shock me if there's a bunch of people in South Florida that just want no involvement in it. Like, just this is going to do nothing for me. In fact, an old public defender friend of mine, and yes, we were friends even though I was a prosecutor, is a Canadian Jew and has been following this like. And I believe he's board certified in appeals as well.
Oh.
And I can tell you that he would never take this case because he feels very strongly about it and just wouldn't do it.
Okay. Well, this is a good hypothetical. If Donna had called the police immediately after the bump, would we even be here? I would like to think, yes, we would still be here because she still wrote the checks to Katie, and Katie ultimately did implicate her somehow. Also, it depends on.
Well, we wouldn't have. So I think that, you can make an argument here as to whether the reason Charlie finally got charged was because of the change in the state attorney. They blamed it on the Dolce Vita tape finally being audible.
Yeah.
But the Dolce Vita tape would not have occurred but for the bump and but for them not calling the police. So it's possible.
Yeah. But then what if maybe Donna still would have tried to flee to Vietnam after.
Well, she calls the police. Maybe she has to give a statement to the police, and God only knows.
Yeah, she could have sunk herself deeper by telling some sort of stupid story to the police. I don't know.
I mean, look at what we're dealing. I mean, we just wanted to get away to Vietnam. I feel like there's a reason your lawyer tells you to not say anything. It's usually because you are not going to help yourself.
Yeah. Oh, what's this? What's your opinion on Pam Bondi? Who's that?
Pam Bondi is the current Attorney General of the United States, but she was also the Attorney General of the state of Florida for multiple years. And an old trial partner of mine from South Florida had worked for Pam. She was also the state attorney of Hillsborough County. I think it was Hillsborough for several years. And my old trial partner had worked under her there. And just said she was a good boss. That's about it. I'm not sure exactly. Look, every administration has a scandal or several. I don't know which scandal you're referring to in Florida. I mean, I repeatedly said we're America's Australia. I'll refer you to the SNL skit as to her testimony in Congress, which I think it captured it pretty well.
Okay. Did you know that Linda Bailey was Dan and Wendy's mediator? If so, isn't it unethical for her to testify? I think so. I wouldn't do that. She did it for the money. It was so obvious. She was probably tempted by the dollars.
Well, there's like the can you and should you. Those are two different things. Can you? I'm assuming that Linda didn't do something patently illegal in a high-profile case when she knew that the public would probably have knives out for her. I'm just making it. I mean, she's not dumb. But the should you is the other part of it. The other thing is that mediations are supposed to be confidential. as you know, that like usually it's any kind of offer for a settlement agreement or mediation, anything trying to reach a conclusion to the case that's not a full trial. There's evidence rules about that being confidential and not being able to be admitted into evidence later. So that's the part that to me, I don't, the part that kind of makes you go, is that, well, if she was a party to the two lengthy mediations, like they were like 2 days, hours and hours and hours and hours of mediation, and they didn't come to a conclusion, then how could she testify that it wasn't contentious?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just looking at the pleadings and saying, well, it wasn't contentious. Like it sounds like maybe you had some information that was contentious.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe stuff you couldn't testify to because it was confidential. But I don't know if I want to go down the rabbit hole of researching that.
Okay. Somebody was asking who this person is. So that's your bio in a nutshell, right?
Yeah.
Did you go to Florida State?
I did not.
Oh, where did you go?
I went to William and Mary in Nova.
Oh, okay.
I think I'm wearing there we go.
Yeah, I had no idea you went there because I have friends who also went there, and
usually people stick
too.
more up in the Virginia, North Carolina area after that. But
yeah, did you have a good time?
I did. It was it's the second oldest college in the country, so I really the history is pretty phenomenal to like think that you're walking over the same stones that Thomas Jefferson walked on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty. I mean, I enjoyed it. My allergies went crazy, but it's kind of par for the course.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I've already privately asked you this, but people keep asking, when are we going to see the jail calls? So you said that there is some potential for that not being released if something's still going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, Florida Statute 119 has a bunch of exceptions to public records laws. Like when can the state say we're not yes, Busch Gardens. They had Oktoberfest there. So just imagine that with college students at Busch Gardens.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
But there's like statutory reasons that in the state of Florida where you can decide you're not going to fulfill a public records request. Some of them are just like, I'm not going to send you the picture of a deceased human being in a homicide case, like just to protect their dignity. We're not going to provide a confession to the media in a case because we don't know if it's going to be admissible. So we don't want to taint the jury. So there's like different reasonings behind each individual thing. And one is if it's an ongoing investigation. So like I couldn't do a public records request and get all the police reports on a pending investigation against one of my clients so that he could figure out how to hide all the evidence. Now, obviously, I'd be in trouble if I helped him do that. But while they're in the course of an investigation and until it is closed, they can refuse to turn them over. And I mean, it sounds like she spent quite a bit of time on the phone. So can't imagine how long it's going to take them to go through it. There's also, that you might want to do some kind of forensics and interview people on the outside as well. I think that there is still the distinct likelihood that there are other people being charged in this case, and Donna and Harvey talking to each other on the phone is probably just a gold mine.
Yeah. Well, is it true that before stuff gets released to the public, somebody inside has to review it all to make sure there shouldn't be stuff that's redacted?
Right. Correct.
Okay. So that's why they charge people to get the stuff sometimes, right?
Right. Hourly. Usually video and audio take quite a bit longer than paper because paper you can just take it out like that. But video and audio, you have to like edit. The video and audio.
Is there some sort of set rate that they charge people for?
They'll usually let you know up front what that, hey, we're estimating it's going to take 2.5 hours of work and it's $30 an hour. So that's 70 or $75. So if you're willing to pay that, could you please make this payment up front? And then they'll send you the information. So a lot of agencies want to see the money up front because there's plenty of people that just will make requests and then not pay. So, but yeah, I mean, like back in the day, they used to like release police reports with people's social security numbers on them, home addresses, you know, and then, you know, you wonder why we have an identity theft problem in South Florida. That was part of it. Like you were just listing victims' social security numbers.
Yeah. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are like the things that need to come out. I mean, I recently had a case where I filed the entire transcript of a victim, and it always bothered me because you don't identify victims of sex offenses. That's one of the rules. But like if you were to say, like my mother's daughter, Mary's daughter was the victim of a sex offense. Well, Mary, you didn't say my name, but Mary only has 2 daughters. So, you know, you got a 50-50 shot of having. So I took out any of the family names that might try to place her in the family. I took out a medical condition that she had to try to, because it was a rare medical condition. And I thought that was something that might identify her. I think I went a little bit further than I needed to just because it's a sex offense and I don't want anybody pointing fingers at me. But I mean, that's what needs to be redacted by somebody in the clerk's office. And then it wasn't posted for several days because the clerk's office was waiting to go through it themselves and make sure I didn't miss anything.
Okay. Yeah. Just to let you guys know, I did make a request for jail records and phone calls about 2 weeks ago. So they do say on the website that the requests will be addressed in the order they are received. So I still haven't gotten a response, but I wouldn't be surprised if I don't get anything in terms of actual calls, because I'm pretty sure True Lifestyles did request them earlier and, you know, couldn't get anything. So yeah,
and
I'm trying.
Also, I mean, TPD was running. They told me 2 to 3 months behind on public records requests. There's also part of the statute that will allow you to to get attorney's fees if they take too long. So it's a fun statute if you read through the whole thing, because if they screw something up or they don't provide you something, that's something that they may end up having to pay for in court.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't want to go after the state of Florida. So, you know, we're just nosy people on YouTube who are totally into this case. So that's why we're all just so excited when somebody gets some new info. So, for example, let me spotlight True Crime Wifey. I think she commented a little bit up there. Well, anyway, True Crime Wifey has some new video footage of Luis Rivera being transferred to Tallahassee. So I thought that was sort of interesting. Most of it is just him sitting there in a van. But, you know, it's still kind of cool to see because we're so into the case. So please check out True Crime Wifey.
Yeah, and seeing the stuff behind the scenes, I mean, like they really do try to treat inmates with respect. And some of, you know, that's been also a good thing with body cam too, that it protects both. You know, there's a lot of finger pointing that goes on by people that are in prison. So, you know, putting it all out in the open is a good thing. Oh, prediction for Wendy's arrest?
Yeah, that's what everyone wants to talk about. What's your opinion?
I agree with Dave Amberg. I think by the end, I think he said by Thanksgiving. I think by the end of the year. I would say if it's been 6 months and there's no arrest, that's when you start getting worried that it's not going to happen.
Okay.
Because keep in mind, a lot of these, think about Mr. Geiger. Think about, some of these, you lose witnesses the longer you wait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not to mention, it's just so stressful for the Markels and witnesses like Rob Adelson, Jeff Lacasse, because they have this thing hanging over their heads. And when's it going to be done? When's it over?
And
Yeah.
can you imagine being Jeff Lacasse and going to the supermarket in Tallahassee and
Well, hopefully nobody bothers him.
I know, but it's just how many times are you going out being recognized in public?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you ever run into some of these witnesses?
I haven't, no. But I live almost in Georgia. So north of Tallahassee. So I'm a couple miles from the Georgia border. So if he lives near FSU, that's kind of on the southeast side of the city. Southwest side of the city. So we probably frequent different supermarkets.
Yeah. Oh, this is kind of a good question. Why didn't Lewis get fast food or Wendy's like Charlie did?
I don't know.
What's the guess?
So Lewis was in a van transport and Charlie got flown in. That might be the difference. That, he was on a plane, so they need to feed him or something like that, that he didn't get they've taken all the meals off all the planes these days.
Oh.
So it's possible they had a food for him on the road, or Lewis, I don't know where he was being housed, but if it's a shorter drive, maybe they knew he got a meal when he was there and he'll get a meal when he gets here.
Yeah, I think that transport was perhaps one hour. So he probably did eat at that Mariana Correctional Facility.
Oh yeah, if he was in Mariana, that's close.
Yeah. Oh, poor guy. He probably deserves some Wendy's too. Yeah.
But Charlie, think about Charlie flying in from South Dakota. He's probably flying from South Dakota toward Atlanta. And then he's in custody in Atlanta with the U.S. Marshals. I mean, I think that's probably their only option. They had to go through kind of drive through to feed him before they showed up at the.
Yeah. Somebody said that it was probably a third-party contractor that had to transport Charlie to Tallahassee because, well, the van did look sort of different, but who knows?
The U.S. Marshals.
Yeah, who knows? But I think those guys that transported him actually paid for his Wendy's.
Maybe.
So that would be nice. Yeah.
Well,
thank you, True Crime Wifey.
Maybe better Google reviews? Is that a thing? Is it a thing to ask for better Google reviews for prison transport?
Oh, I don't think so. But remember, he was saying that the guys were so great and he was praising the guy, but then he was such a jerk to the female jail staffer who opened the door and his toe happened to be there. So he was so rude.
And of course, the body cams are on the people moving them, so you don't see uniforms. So it's kind of what your best guess is.
Yeah. Okay. So let me see. Oh, what's this? 3G is reserved for state business for the next 2 days. The grand jury meets in 3G.
Right. It does, because it's a large courtroom. But, hate to say it, but we got a bunch of other homicides in Tallahassee. And now that they've changed the statute, most of the state attorney's offices are indicting capital sexual battery. So that's at least doubling the amount of work they have to do at the grand jury. So I'm just, tempering expectations.
Oh, okay. Well, have you had cases against Georgia or Sarah Catherine Dukin?
Sarah and I were in the same division. I actually covered for her while she was on maternity leave at one point in time.
Oh,
okay. Georgia and I were not. I've had cases against them, but we have not tried any of them. We've resolved them all.
Wait, so did you actually work in the Leon County State Attorney's Office?
Yeah, for about 3 years.
Oh, okay. I forgot. I thought you were doing that down in Broward.
Yeah, I did 9 years in Broward, and then I did 3 years in the state attorney's office for a total of 12. Like 8.5, 9 in Broward, and then about a little less than 3 up here.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, do you ever miss doing prosecution work?
Yeah, I do, but it's really nice to have my own schedule.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as you can attest to, it's very
Exactly.
nice to only answer to yourself.
Exactly. Just like being able to go skating during the middle of the day. You know, I couldn't do that if I worked for somebody. So,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Thanks for that info, Mia. Yeah. Hey, guys, please subscribe also to My Father's Alibi. And let's see, let's scroll down here. Okay. Yeah. Well, anything else you would like to comment on from today's hearing?
Just that they're either very they're very difficult clients to control, or there was potentially no effort to control them. I like those statements were things that I would have redlined, like red pen to death, made it bleed. Yeah, crossing things out. It's like, we're not saying this. You can't say this. Stops, knock it off. You're making things worse. So.
Okay, one last question. If you're an appellate attorney, would you take her appeal? Maybe if that's your job, that's the way you make a living, right?
Yeah, and it's probably it's probably an interesting enough transcript to go through, and to be able to, it's some interesting legal issues, and as I've said in the past, my own entertainment is paramount in this. So, I mean, it's something that would entertain me. I'd probably enjoy it. So I'd probably say yeah.
Well, from an intellectual standpoint, this has been a very interesting case. So it's kind of interesting how Donna started her big pity party speech by saying, well, this is something that Danny Markel wouldn't have stood for. It's a huge travesty of justice. Even Danny would have been upset. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, that kind of fell flat.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like, okay, you're giving your performance of a lifetime and claiming there's no evidence. That was just ridiculous when multiple people kept saying there was no evidence against Donna.
Well, I've only been reversed twice as a prosecutor, and both times were for convicting somebody without enough evidence. So it does happen. I disagree with both of them, by the way, respectfully.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, unfortunately, I guess I better get going. I have so much real work to do. And I hope you can enjoy your time down there on your vacation too.
Yep. I will be
Thank you.
back on the water tomorrow. Thanks for having me. And
Yeah, go back and enjoy your
everybody.
kayaking and stuff. And let's take a break from this whole case, and we'll see what happens with maybe Wendy getting arrested in the next month. We'll see.
Or Harvey, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Okay. Well, thank you for your time. Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
Have a good night, everyone.
This is for Dan. Take care.
Bye.
I'm trying to turn this off. Thank you, guys.